The motel room stank of cigarettes and something sour. David sat on the edge of the bed, the sheets tangled around his legs, staring at his phone screen. His thumb hovered over the send button. The text he'd typed was simple, even innocent looking. "I need to talk about what you said, please." But he couldn't hit send, not yet. From the bathroom came the low hum of the fan and the drip-drip of a leaky faucet. The TV was on mute, flickering with some late-night infomercial promising miracles for only 3 easy payments. David's bag lay open on the floor, his copy of Rupert Sheldrake's The Science Delusion, wedged between worn shirts and a pill bottle missing its label. He rubbed his face, leaned back against the headboard. The motel was just off I-40 outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. The air conditioning buzzed weakly. He hadn't slept, not really. He kept thinking about what Maya had said before she left, how she didn't believe any of it anymore. Manifesting, assumptions, all the theories they used to scribble into their journals like spells. "You think you can just believe your way into a new life?" she had asked. "This isn't some experiment, David. This is our life." But that's what it had always been for him, an experiment, a way to control the chaos. Even when things spiraled, there was a framework, a theory. He hadn't expected it to push her away. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked up. "David?" The voice was rough, low, unsure. He sat upright. "Yes? This is Erin. From the study group in Pasadena, you remember?" His mind clicked into place. Erin, the neuroscientist turned barista who always wore black and asked the toughest questions during the Sheldrake seminars. The one who'd challenged him on his idea that belief alone was enough. "I remember. I know it's late, but I think I found something. About the law of assumption. Something real. Not just theory." He went silent. She continued. "You're the only one I could call. I can't explain over the phone. But I think it's what you were trying to prove. Back then, before Maya." He looked again at his unsent text. "Back then, before Maya, before everything cracked open." "Where are you?" he asked. "I'm in Taos, New Mexico, just past the Canyon Bridge. There's a place. An old ranch." A pause. "I think you need to see it." Outside, a semi-truck rumbled past. David stood, phone pressed to his ear, the decision already made somewhere deep beneath his logic. "I'll leave in an hour." The New Mexico sun rose slow and gold over the desert as David's tires kicked up dust along the empty road. He hadn't said a word in hours, only the occasional sip of gas station coffee breaking the silence. His mind kept looping the same questions. What did Erin find? Why now? And always, what would Maya think? The road twisted through scrubland and sandstone bluffs. He passed an old sign half swallowed by the earth. "Welcome to Taos, elevation 6969 FT." His phone had no service. Of course it didn't. By the time he reached the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge, the sun was high, glaring off the metal railings. He pulled over and stepped out. The wind hit him hard, dry, sharp, the kind that makes you feel like you're standing at the edge of something ancient. He walked to the railing and looked down. Far below, the river cut a deep scar through the desert. It looked unreal, like a painting. David tried to breathe it in, let the silence do something to him, but his brain kept spinning. He turned back to the car. Erin had said, "An old ranch." Nothing more. But as he drove over the bridge and took the dirt road north, the landscape changed. Old adobe homes dotted the hills, some collapsed into dust, others standing proud under the sun. He slowed at a bend where the GPS would have said, "Continue straight," if it had been working. There it was. The ranch sat in a shallow basin between 2 ridges, half buried in pinon and sage. The fence was rusted, gate hanging crooked. A battered pickup truck was parked under a mesquite tree, and on the porch, leaning against a wooden post, stood Erin. She wore the same black hoodie he remembered from years ago, her dark hair pulled into a rough knot. She didn't wave, just watched as he stepped out of the car and crunched over gravel toward her. "You came," she said. "You made it sound urgent." She nodded but didn't smile. "It is." Inside, the ranch smelled of cedar and old paper. Dust motes floated through the sunlight. Books were stacked everywhere, in piles on chairs, covering most of the table. Names jumped out. Neville Goddard, Florence Scovel Shinn, Young, Sheldrake. David ran his hand across a copy of Morphic Resonance. "You said you found something." Erin walked to the back room and motioned him in. There on the wall was a map, hand-drawn, pinned with string and notes. Symbols, names, photos of people he didn't recognize. She tapped the center. This woman, she said, pointing to a faded Polaroid, manifested a whole life, new identity, new relationships, and no one around her noticed the shift. It's as if reality bent to match what she assumed. He frowned. So she lied. No, Erin said. That's the thing. It wasn't a lie. Everyone remembered it the way she did. Reality aligned. David stepped closer. You're saying it worked? Erin met his eyes. I'm saying it's already working. All around us. And we've been looking at it the wrong way. The room was cold. The kind of cold that settles in old adobe walls and doesn't leave. Erin pulled a worn shoebox from under the table and set it down in front of David. It was labeled in black Sharpie, CR. Field notes, 1997-2002. These came from my professor at Caltech, she said. He used to run underground seminars. This was before podcasts, before anyone was talking about Sheldrake or Goddard in public. He recorded everything. David opened the box. Inside were cassettes labeled with dates and scribbled initials. He picked one up. March 3rd, 1999, CRJD, Dissolving Limits. Who's JD? He asked. Erin hesitated. Julia Denning, one of the earliest case studies on what they called applied assumption collapse. She was able to reframe events in her life with such precision that entire outcomes changed, retroactively. David raised an eyebrow. Retroactively, you mean she changed the past? No, she changed the version of the past that people remembered, including herself. That sentence made something shiver in his chest. They set up the old cassette player. The first few seconds were static, then a man's voice, smooth and deliberate. What we assume with emotional conviction becomes structural reality, not just in perception, in time. Then a woman, calm, measured, but something in her voice cracked with pressure. I stopped waiting for them to forgive me. I assumed they already had. And when I came back, it was like the fight had never happened. My sister hugged me. My mom cried. It was gone. David looked at Erin. She's lying, he said, or she's remembering it differently. But that's the thing, Erin replied. She wasn't. We have letters, audio from before and after. Entire threads of her life rewrote themselves. If it were just memory distortion, there'd be inconsistencies. There aren't. David leaned back in the creaky chair. And you believe this? I didn't, she admitted, until I tried it myself. She walked to the window and opened it, letting in a gust of sage-scented wind. The mountains stood quiet in the distance. She kept her eyes out there like she was watching for something. I assumed he would survive, she said softly. My brother, after the crash, I sat by his bed and refused to see the tubes, the monitors. I wrote him letters like he'd already recovered. I imagined his voice, our jokes, and one day, the doctors said the scans were wrong. He woke up. He remembered everything except the coma. David's throat dried. Erin, she turned to him, and for the first time he saw how scared she really was. I think we're playing with something we don't fully understand, she said. And it's not just theory anymore. It's happening. Faster, stronger, and not always under control. He looked down at the tape still spinning in the player. What do you need from me? He asked. Erin didn't answer right away. Then, I need you to help me finish what you started in Pasadena. I need you to help me test it. David stared at the whiteboard Erin had wheeled into the small den. It looked like a conspiracy wall from a crime show. Charts, post-it notes, dates, psychological profiles, even printed emails. But at the center was one simple question, written in bold black ink. What happens when belief outruns memory? Erin clicked a marker and circled the words. We're going to run 3 controlled assumption tests, she said. Real-world variables. One subject at a time, recorded, logged, tracked. David crossed his arms. You're talking like a scientist again. I am a scientist, she said flatly. You're the one who walked away. He didn't respond. Not because she was wrong, but because she was too right. She handed him a manila folder. This is our first subject. Her name's Lena, 32, lives in Albuquerque. 2 months ago, she started assuming that her estranged father had never left her family, just started acting like he'd always been around. She even changed the photos in her house. David flipped through the file. So she's in denial. No, Erin said. Here's the twist. Her mother now swears the father never left, and her younger sister, who used to talk about the divorce constantly. She doesn't remember it at all. David froze. There's documentation, Erin added quickly. Emails from 3 years ago, financial records, court filings, but the people involved don't match the records anymore. He sat down, overwhelmed, and she agreed to talk to us. She thinks we're just behavioral researchers, which, technically, we are. David skimmed the notes again. So what's the goal? Erin knelt beside a recorder and hit record. Goal: determine if shared assumption can accelerate reality adaptation. You and I are going to reinforce her belief, subtly. We'll ask her questions as if her father's presence has always been real. Mirror her version. We track the changes, memories, language, even reactions. Then we see what sticks. David leaned back. And if it works? Erin looked up. Then we've confirmed that subjective belief, when shared, can rewrite collective memory. Not metaphorically. Literally. There was a silence between them, heavy as the desert heat pressing through the windows. Then David asked, "And if it doesn't work?" Erin stared at the whiteboard. "Then maybe Maya was right," she said. "Maybe we're just fooling ourselves." He hated how much that stung. They drove to Albuquerque the next morning, keeping their questions neutral, their presence quiet. Lena greeted them with warm hospitality, a soft smile, and a living room full of family photos that didn't match the records in Erin's file. There, in a framed picture by the fireplace, was Lena, 16 years old, posing at her school play. Her father's arm was around her. David leaned in. "When was this taken?" Lena smiled. "Spring of 2008. Dad never missed a single performance." He nodded slowly, his chest tight. Later in the car, Erin whispered, "The man in that photo. He was in prison in 2008 for grand theft." David didn't say a word, because the scariest part wasn't what Erin had just told him. It was that he recognized the man's face like he'd seen him before. They sat in the truck outside Lena's house for almost an hour after the interview, neither of them speaking. David stared through the windshield, watching kids on bikes weave through the neighborhood streets, the ordinary world moving like nothing had changed. But inside him something had cracked. "I shouldn't have recognized him," he said quietly. "I never met that man, not once. But I knew his face." Erin nodded, her hand tight on the steering wheel. It's like her assumptions bleeding outward. "Reaching us." David turned toward her, unsettled. "You didn't say that was possible." "I didn't think it was." She pulled out her notebook, flipping to a diagram labeled Assumption Echo Effect. "We theorized that shared belief could accelerate adaptation. But if it extends to external observers, then it's not just subjective anymore," David said. "It's invasive." They drove back to the ranch, mostly in silence, the desert stretching endlessly in every direction. The farther they got from the city, the quieter it felt, not just in sound, but in something deeper, like the air had lost a layer of pressure. Back at the ranch, David couldn't sit still. He paced the small kitchen while Erin downloaded their audio recordings to an encrypted drive. "Sheldrake always talked about morphic fields," he said. "Patterns of memory embedded in nature, right?" Erin didn't look up. "Right. What if assumption works the same way, not just shaping memory, but broadcasting it? Like a mental contagion?" She finally stopped typing. "Then we're not researching behavior anymore," she said. "We're documenting a psychological virus." David leaned on the counter, staring at his hands. "It's not just Lena. I've been having dreams, vivid ones, familiar places, only slightly wrong. People saying things they never said. Memories I know didn't happen." Erin stood. "Same." Their eyes met, and for the first time since he arrived, the tone shifted, away from curiosity and towards something heavier. Fear. That night he couldn't sleep. The desert was too quiet. No crickets, no wind. Just stillness. At some point he got up and stepped outside, barefoot on the cold porch wood. The stars were massive overhead. Clean, sharp, infinite. Then he saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the property, not moving, facing the house. His chest tightened. "Erin?" No answer. He squinted. The figure looked like a man. Tall. Still. Familiar. Too familiar. Then the man raised his arm. Slow, deliberate, and pointed. David blinked. Gone. He ran out into the night, heart pounding. Nothing. Just wind picking up and the sharp smell of sagebrush. When he got back inside, Erin was awake, standing by the table with one of the tapes in her hand. "You saw him too," she said quietly. David's breath caught. "You didn't look outside." "I didn't have to," she whispered. "That same man appeared in one of Julia Denning's sessions and in 3 others since." She placed the tape on the table. "He's not part of any assumption," she said. "He's something else." David sat down, the floor cold under his feet. "This isn't just about changing belief," Erin said. "Something responds when we do." 3 days passed in a blur. Erin barely slept, cycling through hours of audio footage, handwriting transcripts, drawing new diagrams that looked more like circuit maps than psychological models. David spent most of his time outside, walking the land, trying to feel grounded in something, anything, that didn't shift beneath his feet. But it was impossible. Time had started behaving strangely. A memory he had, breaking up with Maya in a cafe on Lincoln Avenue, was now a memory of a phone call. The exact same emotions, the same words, but the place had changed. When he brought it up to Erin, she said something that made his stomach drop. "I remember the cafe," she said. "You told me about it years ago. You said she walked out and left her scarf." David's voice was a whisper. "She didn't leave a scarf. Not anymore." Erin wrote it down under a new heading, Localized Temporal Shifts, LTS. "I think what we're doing isn't just reshaping memories," she said. "We're forcing reality to reorganize itself to match assumption, but it's messy. Some parts lag behind, others overwrite instantly." David stared at the floor, his voice low. "What if the lag spreads?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A number neither of them recognized. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "You need to stop." The voice was male, measured, calm. "This isn't yours to control," he said. "There are lines you don't understand." Erin's mouth tightened. "Who is this?" "You're not the first," he said, "but you could be the last. Shut it down." The call ended. No trace, no callback option. David and Erin exchanged a glance that didn't need words. That afternoon, Erin pulled out a USB drive from a hidden compartment in her desk. "This has every session we've logged. Audio, notes, subject files. If anything happens to me, don't say that. I mean it," she said. "Reality is bending, David, and when systems bend, they eventually break." Later, they reviewed Lena's most recent update. She had messaged Erin, "I found a birthday card from Dad from when I was 10. It wasn't there before. The ink is fresh. I checked the postmark. It's from this year." David read the message 3 times. "This isn't memory anymore. This is matter. Physical artifacts, changing to match belief." Erin said nothing. The next morning, David woke to the sound of breaking glass. He rushed into the kitchen. The window was shattered. Erin was gone. Only the USB remained, resting on the table next to her notebook. David ran outside. Her truck was there. No footprints in the dirt, no signs of a struggle, just the wind, the wide silence of the desert, and the distant howl of something not quite coyote. Back inside, he plugged the USB into her laptop. A single video file blinked to life. It was Erin, filmed the night before. "If you're watching this, I've either gone too far or someone didn't want me to keep going. Either way, don't follow, not yet." She leaned into the camera, eyes hollow. "We assumed reality was something solid, but it's not. It's participatory, interactive, and the moment you believe that fully, something responds. Static, then a frame. So brief, he almost missed it. The man from the edge of the property, staring into the lens, smiling. David left the ranch at dawn. He didn't pack much, just Erin's USB drive, her notebook, and a worn-out copy of The Science Delusion that had somehow made its way to the top of his bag again. He wasn't sure where he was going, only that he couldn't stay. Not after what he saw in that video, not after what disappeared. Back in Flagstaff, the world seemed untouched. People filled cafes. College kids crossed streets with headphones in. Everything normal, ordinary. But David knew better now. Reality wasn't fixed, it was willing. He booked a room at the same motel. Different number, but it smelled the same. Smoke, sweat, history. That night, he opened Erin's notebook one last time. The final page wasn't a diagram or a transcript. It was a single sentence. "Whatever we assume with full belief assumes us in return." His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He didn't answer. Instead, he powered on the laptop, connected the USB, and opened the encrypted folder labeled Denning Final Model. Inside were dozens of documents, but one file caught his eye. 26 How the Law Works, RSD. It was a draft of Erin's final report, a mix of technical language and something more raw, more urgent. The final paragraph read, "The law of assumption is not about pretending. It's about replacing. Once the mind holds a belief with unwavering certainty, The world seems to recalibrate to make it true. Not instantly, not cleanly, but relentlessly. And the danger isn't in it not working. The danger is in how far it's willing to go to be believed. David stared at the screen until his eyes blurred. Then he did something he hadn't done in weeks. He opened his text messages and finally hit send on the message to Maya. "I need to talk about what you said, please." To his shock, a reply came seconds later. "David, what are you talking about? We never stopped talking. We just had dinner last night." His heart skipped. He scrolled up. The entire thread was different. Photos, jokes, a picture of them at the Griffith Observatory. A life they hadn't lived. A version that until this moment wasn't real. But now it was. He looked around the room, suddenly unsure what else had changed. The book on the table. It wasn't the science delusion anymore. It was Assumption, a new psychology of reality by Erin Salas. He reached for it with trembling hands. On the back cover was a photo of her, smiling, confident, alive. He turned to the first page, a dedication for David. Because you believed even when you didn't know you were believing. He stood there, suspended between relief and dread. Had she escaped? Had she become part of the new reality? Or had he simply replaced the truth with something more bearable? The motel light flickered. From the mirror across the room, a shadow stood just beyond his reflection, watching.